What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the stream. I'm Ian. Let me turn down the music here so you don't go deaf on me. Hello. I'm Ian. I am the author of this website, techinterview.guide. Painted my wall in the background, hung the lights again. Can do all kinds of fancy stuff like make them flash. I wrote some Python code last night to make the lights flash. Ooh. And with me tonight, I have Ghameerah McCullers. We met through virtual coffee that some of you may know. And if not, we're going to drop some links in and kind of introduce you to that community, fantastic tech community. And Ghameerah and I we were hanging out on a Thursday morning, Thursday afternoon, depending on time zone, just kind of a collective Zoom call where we're all just commiserating about tech interviews. And I'm like, I need to have them on my stream. And so Ghameerah, welcome to the stream. Appreciate you making some time for us tonight. So yeah, let's dive into your background a little bit, and over the course of the evening, we want to find out about like your journey into tech. How'd you even get into tech? How'd you like study software development? What do you do for work now? Tell us a little bit about that interview process, stuff like that. If you drop by chat, feel free to drop questions for either of us in chat, and we'll definitely address that as we go. If you're watching on YouTube, like and subscribe. I'm bad at marketing. You got to help me with it. Let other people find the stream for sure. And if you're watching on YouTube, definitely come watch us on twitch.tv/IanDouglas736 and come hang out with us live sometime. That'd be great. Cool. So Ghameerah, tell us about your background. What were you doing before you got into tech?
So before I actually got into tech, I was working at Waffle House.
Nice.
I was a Waffle House cook.
Cool.
And I was working there for about 3 years, and it wasn't the most thrilling job. I want to say that. I don't want to bash Waffle House. If you live in Georgia or kind of in the South, you kind of know about Waffle House.
Mm-hmm.
The food is great. The employees are interesting. Interesting characters. And yeah, working there, that was one of my first salary jobs out of college.
Okay.
Kind of like getting my foot in the door, management, business, finance, because I got a degree in finance.
Cool.
So after about 3 years of working at Waffle House, I said, this isn't going to cut it for me. I want to do something that's more thrilling, something that's fast paced, something that's growing rapidly. And that was really what I was focusing on when I entered the tech field. And yeah, I mean, I was actually studying Flatiron, studying coding, studying free code camp while I was still working at Waffle House.
Okay.
So it was like the duality of being in a boot camp and also working full time. Amazing journey that I fought through. That was very tough.
For sure.
But yeah, that was me before Flatiron.
So what got you interested specifically in like development when it comes to the tech industry? Tech industry is huge, and there's a lot of technology in every kind of job now. What led you specifically to programming and software?
Wow, yeah, that's a great question. I think I really just had a love for it because I actually took a course in high school. So back in high school, I had a course, I think it was in CSS, and it was basically like the basic fundamentals of programming. And so I was always fascinated with computers, typing. I just love my fingers on a keyboard. That was always very thrilling to me, and it always just felt kind of natural to me. So that was one of the biggest things. And also the boom of iPhones, Apple, Facebook, and social media really intrigued me with the web and how it interconnects and how people are way more connected on the web now. So I was really intrigued by that, and especially with the web and how it's like the design of it has expanded so much. I mean, from the first iPhone and like Windows, like old Windows, like it has shifted so much, and it's been so
For
fun
sure.
to watch the growth.
Yeah, it's been really interesting to just even Microsoft, just as a company, the shift that they've really made into open source. I was chatting with someone recently, and they were talking about like, oh yeah, I used to work at Microsoft back in the days when everybody hated Microsoft, and now everybody loves Microsoft. So of course, as soon as I leave, everybody loves the company. And so we were having a good chat about that. But yeah, Microsoft has definitely made some interesting moves. Not just with the acquisition of like LinkedIn and GitHub and so on, but just in the open source community and just being a lot more involved in that aspect has been really great to watch.
Absolutely. I think, yeah, the GitHub thing was probably the biggest thing that they did where I was like, whoa, okay,
That
Microsoft, I
surprised a
see.
lot of people. Yeah, it surprised me for sure.
Yeah,
So I mean,
for sure.
shout out to your high school for like doing STEM classes. Back in the day, I know, like we had like a computer programming class. Way back in when I had high school. We actually had high school back then. Um, I joke about how long I've been in tech.
Yeah,
I've been in the industry for 26 years, and subtract college and subtract high school is like it's going back a minute. Um,
man.
but we had like a Visual Basic, sort of class back then. It's like just
Yeah,
really sort of simple stuff, and so it's really cool to
man.
see just how much the high schools and stuff like that are getting more into STEM and just really attracting a lot of variety of student into that kind of program. I think it's really great.
Yeah, no, STEM has kind of become sexy. Like it's like,
Yeah,
oh, like this is very sleek, it's very cool.
yeah,
Before it
yeah.
was kind of like this industry that was kind of nerdy and very sciencey, but now
Still
it's
is.
like it still is. Like that's the foundation, the baseline. But I think
Yeah,
attracting people into it now is like let's get more fresh. Let's figure some things out. And I think it's really awesome. It's really interesting. Yeah.
yeah, cool. So how long have you been part of the virtual coffee group? Do you remember when you
Yes.
started with them?
Man. Yeah, I think it was around the time I started with Flatiron because I was trying to find a community of people who were in the similar position I was in because I felt honestly really lonely. I'm like, man, like I'm going into tech, I'm going into this coding boot camp. What is a coding boot camp? Like, I don't even know what this is. This is fascinating. This is a new idea to me. And so I was just trying to figure out, like, what is this even a real thing? Like, is this like,
Mm,
are actual real people doing this?
right, right.
Like, is it just like a facade? I was really just trying to figure that out. So I was really just trying to figure out where the community was. And I don't know exactly how I stumbled upon virtual coffee, but I'm so glad it fell into my lap. Honestly, like, it's such a great, genuine community.
For
It
sure.
really, really is. I
Yeah,
really appreciate the conversations, all the people I meet there. It's really cool. Yes.
and there are people from around the world in that community too. Like it's great. It's not just like, oh, US only. It's like, no, like I've chatted with people from Australia, from Africa, different places in Asia. Like there's people from all over the place in that community. So definitely check it out. And they have like these regular sorts of sessions on Mondays and Thursdays where you can like drop in a Zoom call with a bunch of other people just to talk about, what are you working on, or what are you struggling with, or they'll have like a topic and they'll do little breakout rooms, and then they summarize it all and put it in a Slack community afterwards. Like it's so kind of uplifting, and then like other folks in there, like Becca, like they also do live streaming, and they're on Twitter a bunch and just trying to do everything they can to help community and build up community and stuff. It's fantastic to watch. um, and I've sat in just to kind of listen in a little bit. And I think I initially joined because I'm like, oh, there's like people that are trying to get into tech, and that's kind of one of my fortes. And so maybe I'll just hang out and see if I can offer help from time to time. But I enjoy just hanging out with people and just chatting too. It's so much fun. So
It really is because it's so genuine. Like,
yeah.
especially the co-working hours where it's
Hmm.
like you mentioned, people from all walks of life, people in different countries. You never
Yeah.
know who you might meet. And that's the greatest thing about it. It's like the community is always growing, and there's always people that have been there for a while as well. So I'll see
Hmm.
people that I hadn't seen in a few months. I'm like, wow, look at you! I didn't know that you were doing this. So it's
Right.
always good to catch up.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. So you were working full time at Waffle House, and I'll try to minimize my Jim Gaffigan jokes where he talks about Awful House. Um, but you're working full time, and you're going to Flatiron, and you were studying Free Code Camp. Like, how do you juggle that much stuff? Like, some questions that I typically get on the stream are like, how do you juggle working and trying to do all this job hunt stuff of company research and building resumes and doing take home assignments and like trying to prep for those interviews? Like, there's so many things to juggle. Like, when do you find time to sleep? Like, what did you find worked for you as far as strategy of balancing all of that? And from the aspect of like Flatiron versus Free Code Camp, having like a structured curriculum with deadlines versus unstructured but still curriculum that you follow, but like no deadlines, no like real pressing need to like get through something.
I mean, I
A lot
cannot
to
say that
unpack
it's
there, I know.
easy. No, like yeah, like I'm even thinking back on it. It was not easy. It was not. But you really think about it. You invested in yourself. You decided to take on this coding boot camp, and you were like, wow, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna take myself on this coding journey. I'm gonna enter into this field. And you're like, wow, what am I gonna do to actually make myself successful? Like I was constantly asking myself that every day. I was really contemplating even doing the boot camp. So before that, I was thinking, wow, like how am I gonna make this a successful experience before I even joined the boot camp? So that was like I was very intentional about it. That was my biggest thing. It was like, how am I going to actually make this like something that I wouldn't regret, number one.
Hmm.
And also thinking about using the resources that Flatiron gave me. Flatiron was
Okay.
very, very amazing at what they were, intentional about themselves. They really set out plans for us. They were like, "Hey, you're going to write blogs
Oh, wow.
every single module. You're going to write a blog. You're going to put it out there that you are a software engineer, not that you're
Hmm.
aspiring,
Right, right, right. Yep.
that you are a software engineer. You're gonna put yourself out there in the community. You're gonna network as if you are a software engineer, and you're gonna just sell yourself as a software engineer currently. So
Hmm.
that was one of the biggest things for me was confidence and putting myself out there and networking with people because when you're entering the job market, you're constantly having to interact with people who are judging your character, judging your skills. So you have to have that confidence, and so that was the biggest thing for me is like, how do I make sure I feel confident? How do I network with people? How do I meet someone new every day?
Right.
Because that was honestly the way that I got my first role. So my first role was at Pop Menu, which is like a startup here in Atlanta,
Okay.
and I got it through a referral from one of my cohort mates.
Wow,
So
nice.
being in network with people is huge. That was my biggest thing is like, how do I network with people and also make sure I get these modules done, make sure that I, stay focused on my projects and just thinking ahead as well. I didn't want to get too far behind, so I made sure that when there was a module project that was coming up, that I was planning it maybe 2, 3 weeks in advance before it was actually
Hmm.
due. Didn't wait to the last minute. I know procrastination is like it's like one of the Achilles heel of most of us.
For sure.
But I tried not to procrastinate. I tried to be diligent about the fact that I would have to work, and I actually worked overnight, so I knew that sleep was going to be an issue. So I didn't. I sacrificed. I didn't. I
Hmm.
didn't go out. I didn't party. Um, this was also during a pandemic,
Yeah.
so that was
Made
kind
it
of a
made it
blessing in
easy not to go
disguise.
out there.
Exactly.
So, what
That
was
was that was it.
yeah, what was the total sort of duration of that journey then from when you decided like I'm going to do this to getting that first job or at least finishing up school to where you were actually applying for the job? We'll get to actually getting the
Yes,
job next.
man. Yes. So I actually started Flatiron like really right when the pandemic started, March of 2020.
Hmm.
And so I was honestly thinking about jobs before I was even in the program. I was like,
Okay.
where could I work? Where am I gonna um, pay this loan back or this ISA back? Because that is a part of the process.
Right, right.
So I was thinking about how I would be employed before I was even in the program. And I think the job search really started when I started interviewing was right at the last module because that's when the career coaching kicks in with Flatiron. So this was
Okay.
like, I think this was like February of this year, of 2020, of last year actually, 2021. So I was interviewing and also finishing up the last module. So yeah, it was go time for me.
Yeah. And
For sure.
then from when you finished, and then like how long was the job hunt? So you mentioned that you had a referral from a cohort mate to get that first job. And I talk on the stream a lot about how like the networking is going to find you a job way faster than just like, blasting resumes out there. How long did that whole process take from like when you finished or when you're like, okay, now it's time to start looking for a job to actually getting that job?
Yeah, so once I got the internship, the possibility of getting a job was like 50-50 because an internship, sometimes they may hire you full time, sometimes they may not. So this internship lasted about 3 months. It was a summer internship. And I knew that, you know, there was a certain point in the internship where they were like, we're probably not going to hire you. So I was like, okay, got it in my mind. Let me start really putting myself out there, interviewing heavy while I'm still in the internship, because I didn't really want to have that gap in between where I wasn't employed, because I didn't want to have that question be asked during interviews, because that's something that interviewers ask, like, what was that gap in your work history
Right.
about? So I was like, I just want to have a job right away once this internship ends. And so I was able to get a job right when the internship ended. And
Cool.
it was through a recruiter, and it was through networking that I
Okay.
found the recruiter. So, yeah, the power of networking is undoubtedly a superpower. It
Yeah, for
is.
sure, for sure. We had a question show up in chat. Chris of Hull asked, "Do you still write blog posts now that you're out of Flatiron?"
I haven't in a while, but that has been one of my goals for this year is writing a blog post a month.
Okay.
That's the goal.
Yep.
Um, one of my friends, Caleb, is pushing me. We're holding each other accountable with that, to write blogs every month. And honestly, it's been tough to just adjust to having a full-time role that I haven't been focusing on blogging.
Mm.
I've been focusing on getting more familiar with my work members, my teammates, and I think now that I'm more comfortable, I can start blogging again. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Good question.
Uh,
That's a great question, though.
yeah, it was. Thanks for asking, Chris of Hull. I know the virtual coffee team. Like, there were a bunch of people doing a big push back in November of like write something every day or write 50,000 words over November. It's like that's a lot. Like I remember trying to do that blogging challenge, years and years ago. It's like, all right, that first day you crank out like hundreds or thousands of words, and the next day it gets a little shorter and a little shorter, and by the end of the month you're like, here's my blog post finished. Like, just literally it's one sentence of like, I published something. So yeah,
Exactly. Yep.
it's a challenge for sure to keep up with.
It's
And
rough.
yeah, and we talked a little bit before we went live on like New Year's resolutions and things like that. I think that'd be an interesting one. I kind of talked last stream
Mm,
about, set smaller goals of, like one blog post a month. That's not unreasonable. But if you're like, I'm gonna blog every Saturday, it's like, well, something comes up and you don't blog, and then you're beating yourself up about it, or now you feel like you're behind. You got to write 2 next week, and that turns into 5, and it's like, next thing you know, you just shelve it, and you're like, oh, I'll do it again next January. But I think starting small, like one a month, it's like, okay, it doesn't have to be like a huge in-depth deep dive on anything.
at
Like, you
all.
can cover a topic, or like, these are some generalities that I've learned, on the job, or on the job I'm working with such and such a tech, and this is what I've kind of come to discover. Like, those kinds of blog posts are actually really interesting, and sometimes those make really good meetup lightning talks of like, hey, let me tell you my experience with such and such.
Oh yeah.
Not that you're telling people like this is how you should do it, because then you get 1,000 people telling you why you're wrong. But if you just say like, this was my experience trying to implement this technology, and this is a bump I hit, and this is how I got over it, end of story. You
Hmm.
don't have to even ask, what do you think, because then again, you'll get people telling you why you didn't do it the right way, but just be like, I'm just presenting this. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
because we're always constantly talking about our approach in software engineering.
yeah,
Because we're code writers at the end of the day. We're authors, and so your approach can be completely different from one of your teammates.
yeah.
So talking about what your approach is really helpful, because we're just all thinking from different perspectives at the end of the day. So
Yeah. And that's the really important thing, and that's also why I've got Ghameerah on the stream, because perspectives, right? Like, I don't ever want to just be, like I talk about a lot too. I don't want to just be a white dude on the internet with opinions and, and a podcast kind of thing. Is like, I like to have other
mm,
people on the stream that can share kind of their perspectives. Next week I got Eric coming on the stream. The week after that I got Mike Chen coming on the stream, who's been doing a lot of Twitter Spaces lately. So I'm like super excited to have like a
oh yeah.
variety of folks on here just to come and share their thoughts on interviewing and so on. Cool. So your internship ended, and then you
Mhm.
got that next job. What was that interview process like for you? Like, were there a ton of hoops? Did you get the typical kind of leak code style interview, or was it just conversation? Like, what did that kind of look like for you?
Thank God. Thanks to the universe that it wasn't these algorithms that have been crazy. I've
All
seen some
right.
algorithms that have been wild. Um, but it's actually grateful. It's like a really grateful experience that I was able to just get an interview that was basically a conversation. I spoke with maybe the hiring manager. I spoke with like my lead developer, and then I spoke with like my engineering manager. And this was just a conversation. It was a conversation about what technologies I knew, talking about JavaScript, talking about Rails, just talking about my experiences using those technologies, the pitfalls that I find with them, the great
Hmm.
things that I see in them. And yeah, it
Those are
was just a
tough.
really
Those are
easy
tough
conversation.
questions. Like talk about pitfalls and stuff like that. It's like you gotta have used something for a minute to like think of the downsides. Like I taught Rails for a while, and everyone's like Rails is the greatest thing. It's like not always. Like there are
No,
bad things about it too, but unless you've used it for a minute, like you may not know all the bad things about it. So
absolutely.
interesting.
You hit it right on the head because yeah, it's like you really have to know it to really
Hmm.
know what the downsides are. Like
Yeah.
people always talk about why you should do Rails or why you should do React, but they don't really talk about what's the bad parts of React. Why
Hmm.
is it difficult? Why aren't most people entering into the React space? So it was really interesting to have that conversation. Um, and I really enjoyed it because it was really like, wow, like this is really just a conversation about technology at the end of the day. And it
Yeah.
was like, what do you love about this technology? Like, tell me like what you're passionate about with this technology. And I thought it
Hmm.
was cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One piece of advice that I like to give new developers that are still studying and trying to get into the industry is like don't get so sort of tied to a tech stack like this is the only kind of job I can get. Once you've learned those fundamentals, you can apply those fundamentals to other technologies. So if you learned Rails, it's like, well, go find another MVC framework, in another high level language. Like you could probably pivot over to Python and Django fairly easily because it's also kind of MVC and Python's very similar to Ruby. Like you'll be able to pick that up really quickly. So don't
Oh
limit
yeah.
yourself like I must get a Rails job or a JavaScript job
Hmm.
because that's all I know. When you go to that interview, it's also about like selling them on what you could do, and hiring for
Oh
that
yeah.
potential. So
Oh
just
yeah.
backing up a step about blog posts. Riddle guy 111, thanks for the first time chat. Asked a question. So with all of the these blog posts and whatever, do you see a problem with the software industry kind of cluttering the web with low quality blog posts? I would hesitate to necessarily say that they're low quality if you're just sharing your experience on things. I think that it's still valuable to write things up from your perspective on this is what I faced and this is how I got over it. I don't really see that as being low quality. It is a lot of quantity, yes, but not necessarily poor quality. Ghameerah, any thoughts on that, or like what do you think about like putting out a regular sort of blog?
I would say that I mean the internet is kind of it's like a space where everyone can kind of have the range to express themselves and share their ideas with people. And low quality is a perspective thing because someone who's a beginner who's learning a new technology may be able to relate to that blog post better than
Mhm.
someone who is like really far advanced.
Right,
So it really is about perspective.
that's a good
And
point.
I think it's just a really great exercise for people who are getting into the field because we all do have to learn this. It's a good practice of putting yourself out there, gaining more confidence, um, kind of putting yourself out there in a way where you're like getting your peers involved as well because people are able to engage with you. So they're able to ask questions, they're able to say, huh, I would have thought about it this way. So I think that's really
Mm.
important when you're learning something new.
Yeah, for sure. Especially if you can post on like medium.com or something where other people can, leave kind of comments or feedback or like highlight points that they really liked about the blog post. And there are a lot of platforms out there where you can do that kind of stuff. Um,
Oh, yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
yeah, awesome. Okay, so go back to the job interview. So a lot of conversation about technologies and so on. How did that then end up as a job offer? Like, what would you say was the total sort of interview timeline and like number of hours, getting ready for the interview or actually doing the interview and so on?
Man, so the actual interview itself, I believe it was like 2 hours long
Okay.
because I had like four different conversations with which were like 30 minutes each. And so it was like back to back to back,
Okay.
having conversations
Hmm.
with different people. Um, and yeah, so it was like 2 hours. I think before I actually spoke with anyone during that process, there was like an assessment I took,
Mhm.
which was like a behavioral assessment just to feel like my work style, my
Gotcha.
personality style. And before that, it was like an introduction to like my experience. And yeah, it was basically like 3 steps. It was very, very easy. And actually, at the end of all of the interviews, I did kind of do an algorithm, but it was more so like a thought-based algorithm. It wasn't like I had to do
Hmm.
any code. It was like,
Okay.
how do you think about this problem? How would you approach this problem? And it wasn't like I
Hmm.
had to come up with a solution. It was just like they wanted to see how I thought about
Just a thought
solutions. Like
process.
what
Interesting.
yeah, just a thought process. And I was like, wow,
Hmm.
this is really cool.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's kind of neat.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
very
yes.
different.
Yeah, yeah.
And I kind of tweeted recently too, because I've been looking for a new job in kind of developer relations, and how that interview process is very different than like the typical software engineer, where you're doing like the leak code thing and probably a take home assignment and all that stuff. And I've certainly seen some of those too. And where the dev rel is like, tell us how you feel about this aspect and that aspect, and community versus coding versus content creation, and then like how do you sort of
Mm.
see your strengths playing into this, and all kinds of things around like tracking metrics, and what do you feel is successful for you in this kind of role, and it tends to be a lot more conversation, and then it's typically like, okay, show us you can code. It's like, okay, well, can I just give you some repos that you can look at? And for some companies that's been fine. One company, they are like kind of FANG level. I actually withdrew from their process today, even though their salary was
Mm.
stupid ridiculous. It was like, yeah, it's like 270K plus like 400 plus K in equity, and I'm like, what? It's like 400K in equity over 4 years.
They're just
It's
like,
like
here,
that's
take all the
that.
money.
Yeah, it's like, are you kidding me? Like, but they wanted like 6 hours of my time, where it was like,
Mm.
half-hour phone call and then a 60-minute coding assessment, just to get into the process, where the first step is another 60-minute coding assessment. I'm like, you just did that, like, why do it again?
Why
And then
again?
that and
Yeah.
then that led into like a several more 60-minute sessions, and then 4 like 30-minute conversations, and I'm like, how about no? Like,
Yeah.
I appreciate it, but no. That was just too much.
Mm.
It's like, and I mean, some of that, granted, it comes with a healthy dose of privilege of, who I am and what I know, that, and the
Mhm.
fact that I've got potential offers, I've got like an official offer, I've got a verbal offer, like I've got choices that I don't have to jump through that hoop. Yeah,
Mhm.
having like double the salary of like any other offer that I've got, sure, but it's not about money in the bank. It's about quality, and like, am I even going to enjoy that company? And they're starting to get into
Mhm.
crypto, and I got like a hate relationship going right now with with the idea of crypto and environmentalism and stuff like that. So I
Mhm.
didn't feel bad about walking away from that role, for sure.
Yeah.
Um, but
Man, yeah, that's a lot of hoops. Those are a lot of
yeah,
hoops.
yeah,
I'm not too fond of the hoops. But it is a part of the game, and it is about,
it is.
like you said, about the privilege as well. When you kind of have that security of like, I can find something that isn't, I already have offers. I don't really have to do this.
Yeah,
There is a different approach to that. But it's still like, dang, I don't want to have to do this. Why should it be this hard?
right.
Like, come on.
Yeah. Yep, for sure. So was this job interview the only interview process that you went through, or did you have other interviews that you were kind of entertaining and working through at the same time, or was this like the only thing? And if it didn't pan out, like, what would you have done from there?
So, to be honest, it was kind of my only choice. There were other options I had, but it wasn't really some other options that I was taking too serious. It was just seeing what's out there. But
Okay.
this was the best offer that I had gotten. Other offers were significantly lower
Okay.
in salary, and I wasn't really happy with that.
Hmm.
And actually, what I was going to offer them as far as salary or negotiate was about 5,000 less than what they actually offer me.
Okay.
So they said, we know you want 75, but we're gonna actually offer you 80. And I was like, whoa. To hear that and having your first tech role was like it was amazing.
Yeah.
So I was like, man, I don't really need to find any other any
Right.
other opportunities.
For
You
sure.
clearly want me. You made it really easy for me. You really showed me that you wanted me. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I think as I get more experienced and as I get more seasoned, and when I have like now that I have the leverage, I think I'll kind of move into another interview process where it's like I'll accept or kind of entertain other offers at the same time, just
Yeah,
so I
for
can
sure.
negotiate a little bit more.
Yeah, and that's also, and you'll hear me say this on the stream all the time. Always get them to say a number first, so that you don't like, oh, I'll take 75K, and be like, all right, I'll pay you 75K. You know, I would have given you 80 if you'd asked, right? That's why you always got to ask
Absolutely.
them. And you know, going through this process myself, it's either like typically the very first phone call I have, where if they don't ask, I bring it up. It's like, what's the salary band for this job? And I only had one company not tell me the salary band. They're like, "Well, we'll get to that like later in the process." And I'm like, "Are you gonna waste my time here?"
Mm.
And that was actually the company that made me the official offer today, and the offer wasn't bad. And so
Mm.
you know, I'm
Okay.
considering it. I got to look through their benefits package and make sure that all that's gonna kind of line up. But I've also got another
Yeah.
verbal offer too. So I told them like, hey, I'm gonna take a couple of days and think about it. And they're like, yeah, no problem. They've been looking for months, so they want to fill the role, but it's not like urgent, like I have to tell them tomorrow kind of thing.
Mhm. Mhm.
But yeah, we'll see how that plays out. But
Congrats.
always
That's
thanks.
really cool.
But get them to say a number first. Get them to say a
Yes.
number
Yes.
first.
No,
Um,
that's good.
yeah,
That's good.
and push them on it.
That's good advice.
Yeah. Um, I was
Yes.
trying to remember what you were just talking about a minute ago that actually prompted me in that virtual coffee to get you on the call.
Mm.
There was something that you were sharing a minute ago that you were sharing in that Zoom call too, where I'm like, I gotta have Ghameerah on my
Oh,
stream. Trying to remember what it
was
was
it
now.
about selling the promise? Kind of like that. I think that's something you just mentioned about selling the promise about, hey, I'm a junior engineer
Yeah,
and
not leveling yourself. That's what it was. Yeah. Not leveling
mhm.
yourself. I'm like, that's what I
Yeah,
tell
yeah,
people
yeah.
too. Like, you got to
Yes.
come on here and tell them that
Abs-
too. Don't say I'm an
yes.
aspiring dev. Don't say I'm a junior dev.
Mm-mm.
Let the
No.
company level you. Let them tell you what level they want to
Mm.
hire you at. Just say I'm a developer. Yeah.
Mm. No,
So when
that's
I
huge.
heard you say that, I'm like, we're aligned on that. Got to get you on the
Yes, yes, yes,
stream.
yes.
So
No, that's
that was
good.
awesome.
I'm glad that you understand that as well, and
Yeah.
that you're preaching that to people because a lot of people really just be like, I'm a junior or I'm aspiring, and I'm just like, why are you selling yourself that way?
Mm.
Like that like Walmart doesn't be like, hey, like this is crap. You know, do you want this? Or like, not saying that's equivalent. Not saying junior
Right. Right.
engineers is crap, but like they don't sell it short, basically.
Right. Right.
So even at my current role, they don't call me a junior engineer. Like they'll say it like around within the company, but my
Sure.
title isn't junior engineer. My title is software engineer one.
Right.
So that sounds a little way more different than saying I'm a junior.
Hmm.
And it has a negative connotation now where it's like, oh, you're
Yeah.
a junior, you know.
Right. Right.
So I
Right.
think just saying, hey, I'm just a software engineer, you know,
Yeah.
and
I
that can
typically
mean a lot.
Yeah, I typically try to avoid using the word junior in the first place and just say it's entry level. And honestly, some people will look at like your LinkedIn profile and see software engineer one and go, okay, you're a junior. At some point, you can just drop that number and just say I'm a software engineer at the company. Like no one in your HR team is going to look at your LinkedIn and be like, hey, you're not a software engineer, you're a software engineer one. Like they're not going to tell you to do that.
No.
And even if they did, they can't force you to do it. And so you could even take that level off of your LinkedIn, and then people just see you're a software engineer. Like, call yourself what you are. You've studied it, you've gone through the process, you are now a software developer. Call
Yeah, and
yourself such, you know?
we don't have like accreditations or like
Right.
licensing here to even determine what that really means.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like you can define yourself for yourself. Don't let anyone else define you.
It's pretty subjective for sure. Yeah.
Hmm.
Cool. We got Zooey in chat. Good to see you, Zooey. Zooey says, I need to make it a habit of asking on day one about salary. Yeah, that very first phone call is the best time to do it. If they don't bring it up, and they say, do you have any questions for me? You can say, yeah, just out of curiosity, what's the salary band for the role? Like, what are you offering for this role? And if they turn around and say, well, what are you looking for? That's the downside, is they could answer your question with a question. Which is why it's sometimes good for them to ask the question first, so you can answer their question with the question and get them to say the number first. But if they counter it and say, well, what are you looking for? You say, well, I've got a range in mind, but I'm just kind of curious, like, what's the evaluation process and what's the band and like how do you evaluate, what the pay is and things like that, and get them to say a number and just push them on it and get them to say a number. It makes a big difference for sure.
That's good.
So,
The first call.
yeah. And Camilo says, so if they ask for a number, how do you push them to give you a number instead? Many recruiters ask at the start to gauge if they should continue or not. It's the same with you though. Like if you tell, like this company that I got the offer from today, they were the company that said, oh, we'll talk about money later. It's like, okay. And then when they gave me the offer, I'm like, okay, well, it's a little lower than I was expecting. I was expecting this kind of range, which I would have preferred to talk about like early on in the game, but at the same time, their product is actually really intriguing, and what they do is actually going to be really fun. So I'm not totally closed off to the idea of their offer, but there's still negotiation power in there too. But
absolutely.
But pushing back on them and say, what are you offering for the role? And just say like, what, like based on level, like, yeah, I've got to get through the evaluation, I've got to like, prove I can do the job, but like, what are you even offering for the role if they don't publish it? And just be really straightforward with them on that. And honestly, my entire interview process since I started back in November, this one company is the only company that wouldn't tell me a number when I asked. Like, and most of the time they were asking me on that very first phone call, what are you looking for salary? I would always say, what are you offering for the role? Like I would immediately answer their question with the like question of what are you offering? Yeah, you have to. And it's weird that it's kind of that game in itself. I mean, we talk about the hoops you got to jump through, and it's weird that that's one of the hoops. It's like, just tell me what you're offering for the role.
Yeah, like
why do we even have to like ask a question and answer with a question? Like, just tell me what you're offering. Like, it would save us a lot of time for sure. And it's nice that some states, like here in Colorado, for example, if you post a job post here in Colorado and you already have at least one employee in Colorado, any job post within Colorado has to include the salary range. And I'm starting to see more and more states like consider that, and I think that that's a wonderful thing to do. I think hiding that kind of information, it doesn't make for a level playing field, and it can introduce a lot of bias, and people worry about negotiating, so they don't negotiate, and it's like, I'll just take whatever you offer because I need a job. Thankfully I've been in tech long enough. It's like, you know what? I'm not in a hurry. I'm going to take some time off around the holidays, and I'll get a job when I get a job. Some people don't have that luxury. Some people are like, if I don't have a job tomorrow, I can't pay rent. It's like, I get that. And so sometimes you are stuck and you just need to take whatever. And if that's the situation, then take that job, immediately start looking for a better paying job. Like they're out there. They're out there for sure.
Yeah, I think some companies understand that too. That's kind of the game where it's like they know that people may be desperate, so they're gonna just accept anything, or people don't know how to negotiate. So but that's what we're having these conversations, so people can come into those processes and be ready to negotiate.
For sure.
Gotta suit up for it.
Yeah. RC Maniac says in chat, I was a software engineer. The next title was software engineer 2, and then the company merged with another. We normalized all the engineers to the same name, and suddenly I was associate software engineer. I don't associate with a software engineer. I am. Yeah, that's a good point. And a lot of people will use those weird titles to sort of level you as well, as like, oh, you're just at like a junior sort of level, so we're just going to call you like associate. And now RC Maniac says they don't even look at jobs that don't have a salary range. Yeah, and I think if you've got the flexibility and you've got the sort of the position to do that, then yeah, do that. Just pass on it completely. I've certainly been hit up by a lot of recruiters lately going, hey, would you be interested in this kind of job? It's like, yeah, if you tell me what it's paying and who the company is, and they're like, oh, we don't want to tell you that because we don't want you going applying for it. It's like, you brought me the job. Like, if I'm going to apply for it, I'll apply through you. I know you've got a job to do, as much as I hate recruiters. They're like, like, that's fine. Like, I don't mind you getting your commission or whatever, because I know that their commission on a senior dev like me is going to be way higher than a junior dev. But like, at least give me some information ahead of time so that, again, we're not wasting our time, talking through all this stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No question.
Cool.
That's really interesting though about the associate thing. What is that even? What is an associate? What is
Y-
that?
yeah, like associate level. Yeah, exactly. Like, what does that actually mean? Nothing. But it's just their way of like slapping like a junior title on you without calling you a junior or like saying software one or whatever. Like, just you're a software developer, you're a software engineer. Just put that on your LinkedIn, put that on your resume. Like, that's the other nice thing too, is we get to tell the narrative of who and what we are. And I've said on the stream too, like, even if that first job is like a QA role, that's fine. You can put that on the resume, but when you apply for that next job, just say, I did that on purpose to make me a better developer. And so now when I'm a developer, I'm going to have this much richer experience of coming in with that QA mindset of testing code and automation and things like that that I wouldn't have had if my first job was just as a developer. Like, you can spin that however you want and tell whatever story you want. Like, oh yeah, totally on purpose that I did that. Even if that was like, oh, this is the only job I can get into tech, tell them it was on purpose. They're not going to verify that. They have no way of knowing, right? Just tell them you meant to do that, you know? So,
This is good. Yes.
yeah.
I'm
Stuff.
learning so much. This is cool.
Yeah. Cool. So you've been there for about 6 months now at that role. What sort of tech stack are you working in? Are you working in like the JavaScript Rails sort of combination that you learned at Flatiron, or what are you building?
Yes, that was probably like the biggest draw, was that the tech stack was exactly the same as what I was learning. So there wasn't much learning curve for me.
Okay.
And the biggest learning curve was using TypeScript and GraphQL. I had never
Okay.
really interacted with those technologies. But yes, I'm working with React, JavaScript every single day. There's actually something that I'm working on now that's kind of bugging me, where it's very, very much so JavaScript based. And yeah, Rails is on the back end. And so yeah, it's really interesting, and it's like very familiar to me. But I'm still even learning more about JavaScript and Rails every day that I
Yeah.
work with it. So it's really, really awesome because it's always growing.
Yeah. Is it a relatively new version of Rails, or are you on like Rails 5 or Rails 4 or something, or is it at least Rails 6?
I think we're on Rails 5 right now.
Okay.
I think we have aspirations to go to Rails 6. Because wasn't that just released like
7 just came
last
out, so 6 has actually
7?
been out.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think it
6
was
has actually been out for a while.
yeah. So I knew there was a new release like recently. But yeah, no, I think getting used to like JavaScript and ECMA 6 is like really where I'm trying to get my comfort zone in. Rails has been, it hasn't, to me, it hasn't been too heavy of a learning curve.
Okay.
It's more so when you get very intricate with like controllers and with the models.
Right.
Luckily, we don't use a lot of views,
Okay.
so I don't really have to interact much with that. But yeah, I'm learning a lot about testing. That's been the biggest learning curve for me with Rails,
Cool.
is the testing. I didn't do much testing with Flatiron.
Yeah.
And yeah, even
I'm-
on the front end, learning about Jest and front end testing.
Awesome. I'm a huge advocate for TDD. It's one of the things I love to teach the most when I was at Turing, is like, you gotta have tests. I won't get into the polarizing topic like Vim versus Emacs when it comes to like mini test versus RSpec, but you know, it's a lot of fun for sure. Like, just figuring out how to even like test for things, like how deep down that rabbit hole do you get testing for edge cases and whatever. There's so much that you can dive into there. It's pretty fantastic.
It is a whole different world. Testing
Yeah.
is like a whole different beast.
Yeah, RC Maniac says in chat, testing is such an untaught area of software. I agree. I mean, except when I was at Turing, because I would drill that into students, like, you gotta know how to test your code. Like, trust me, from experience, all this gray hair I have came from working at jobs where we didn't have testing. And I'm serious about that. I was working like 90 hours a week for 13 months, like, stressed out all the time of like, if I deploy this code, is it gonna break things? I don't know. I hope not. And sure enough, it would break things. It's like, oh,
So
if
like
only
no CI testing, like no.
we didn't have it
pipeline
back then.
testing?
No, we didn't have it back then. TDD wasn't even really a thing until Java kind of invented it around like 2006, 2007, and then it kind of like proliferated out into other languages from there. And this particular company was like 2008, 2009, and I was writing Perl. And I always thought like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if there was a way in software to test that the output of my software conformed a certain way? in order, like, so I, like, in my mind, I'm like, it would be nice if there was a way to write software to test my software, but they didn't really have those kinds of testing tools at the time. Of course, now, like, every language has really robust sorts of testing libraries, and some of them are built right into the language and so on. But yeah, like back in the mid 2000s, it just wasn't a thing unless you were in Java, and yeah, it was a lot more stressful back then for sure. A lot of quick roll that back, that didn't work. We need to like undo all that. So yeah,
So
good times.
I just confirmed in my gem file that we're on Rails 5.2.6.
Okay, nice.
So yeah,
Yeah,
not at 7 yet.
Yeah, I loved teaching Rails 5. Rails 5 had a lot of neat stuff in it. And we taught RSpec. We did a little bit of mini test when we were teaching just Ruby, but then we would switch into RSpec for Rails. And then recently, or more recently, I guess in the past year or so at Turing, we actually changed all of the first module of Ruby to actually work with RSpec as well. It's
Awesome.
you know, for us, it was a friendlier kind of approach to, you know, thinking about testing and what that was involved. But cool. So let's talk about some of the other projects and stuff that you're involved in. Like I see this DevColor sort of hoodie that you're wearing. What's
Yeah.
DevColor? Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so DevColor is actually a network of Black software engineers, Black tech professionals, and kind of is like a cohort kind of based thing where it's
Okay.
like we go through a whole year and you kind of get a squad.
Oh,
And it's like 8 people, 8 developers, and you go through like, what are your goals for this year? Usually starts in January around this time. And you kind of just go through, what are your goals? What do you want to accomplish? It could either be entrepreneurship, it could either be a pay
Okay.
increase, it could either be, you know, just anything that you want to aspire towards throughout the year. And you kind of just meet once a month and you go through, how are you going with your goals? How is work going? Kind of just a
Nice.
space for us to just, you know, let loose, talk about things that are going on, talk about different jobs,
Yeah.
talk about interviews. It's a really great way to network. I've met people who work at Netflix. I've been in community with people who work for like PayPal, all these different companies. So it's a really great experience. I would encourage anyone to join a network where you're around people who are more senior than you, not only in your job. Find a network of people where you can be close with them and ask them questions on the fly, like, hey, how did you figure out this situation? How did you get through this? Did you ever encounter this? It's kind of like mentorship and just having camaraderie with people in the industry.
That's really cool. And I love the accountability portion of that, of like, how are you doing towards that goal? Like just checking in with each other. And, you know, you're way more likely to hit a goal if you've got someone to be accountable to. You know, instead of like, you know, I got my own to-do list on this screen over here. Doesn't mean I'm going to get to it unless I like tell people like, oh yeah, you know, these flashing lights, you know, like I wrote this Python script, so now I can make the lights blink behind me. It's like, okay, well, that's all fine and good. Now I want to automate that. So if I get a new follower on Twitch, they'll automatically like start flashing. It's like,
Hey!
now that goal is out there. You can hold me accountable to it. It's something that I want to try to automate. But
That's really cool.
yeah.
That's
But
really awesome.
yeah. Um, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's great.
Cool.
It's been a cool experience. DevColor, like they have gear, you know, they let you rep them, and they actually have conferences and tech talks, and it's like they have a Slack community as well, so you're able to find jobs, different opportunities. It's a really great community.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful that I found that community, and like you said, the accountability, just being able to write out your goals. They give us
For
like
sure.
templates and like goal setting objectives for us to actually write it out, speak to people about it, and also talk about what is troubling you at your job. Like,
That's really great.
what is,
Yeah.
and you can get advice from people. Like, not, we kind of have this thing where it's like, you don't tell me what to do, but you tell me, hey, if I was you or if I had this experience, this is what I would do.
Yep.
And it's really great to just kind of be like, dang, I'm struggling with this. I don't know how to approach this, but here's the issue. I'm laying it out for you, and you can just let me know how to approach it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And Zooey says in chat too that they'd love to find a network like that for Asians. You know,
That's awesome.
and I'm sure they're out there. You know, at a minimum, Zooey, if you're not part of Virtual Coffee, I mean, definitely check out Virtual Coffee. Lots of folks
No
from
question.
like we said are from around the world. Like they're absolutely happy to help one another out, and you know, having that regular Zoom channel to kind of hang out and commiserate on everything from job hunt to like, oh, I'm really stuck on this thing in React today. Like, who can help me get through this is really really fantastic. So
No question.
yeah.
And even like interview stuff, like job
Mm.
stuff, like it's really, really good to just have other people to be like, man, I'm not the only one going through this. Like
Yeah,
you're
for sure.
dealing with it. Especially as people of color, we deal with like microaggressions at work, we deal with
Yeah.
pay discrimination. So just being like, wow, you have someone who understands what you're going through. So you're
Hmm.
not the only one feeling like that. So I
Yeah.
think that's amazing that you want to find that, Zooey. I think definitely there's probably communities out there for you.
Yeah,
Definitely
for
just do
sure.
some research. Do some research. That's how I found it.
Or start one.
Just looking. Create your own space.
Make your own, yeah.
Yeah,
Get on Twitter, do a
exactly.
Twitter space, or get on LinkedIn and like start up a group and just be like, let's start a network, let's get this, let's make it happen, or start reaching out to folks that in the industry and just say, hey, is there a community like this that I can be a part of? They're probably out there. So yeah.
That's great
Um,
advice.
Cool. So the other thing that we chatted a little bit before we went live is you've also got a podcast which touches on a topic that I've covered on the stream in the past too. Tell us about this podcast.
Yes. Yes. So the podcast it's a pun. It's like a really interesting name. It's called Up a Hill, but it's called Up a Hill because it's about, the difficulties of getting through mental health issues, and it's actually spelled Heal, not Hill.
Okay.
So I really enjoy just talking about, what I've gone through in my healing as far as mental health and normalizing it as well. I think that's the
Awesome.
biggest thing
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
a lot of people don't really have the education around it. It's not something that's pushed heavily in our culture, to talk about mental health, talk about things that we go through. So I definitely would love to get some listeners for that podcast. It's really, really great to just kind of sit back and just think about, what I can do to help myself heal, through trauma, through stress, because we all have stress that we need to deal with, different ways to cope. So I just go through my healing journey, my process, and hopefully people can relate and learn something. And yeah, it's called Up a Hill. I'm gonna drop the link in there.
Yeah, it'd be great. Thanks. I definitely want to check that out
Yeah.
myself. I love just hearing other perspectives on that, especially from the mental health aspect. Like we talked a little bit before we went live how I had Spencer and oh wow, just completely blanked. I see his face.
Yes.
Had two guys on the show, and we were
It's
just
very
talking
time.
about like normalizing mental health in tech and how we don't talk about it nearly enough. And it's like so
Not at all.
disappointing that it's not. Although I am seeing a pretty big shift, especially on Twitter lately, of people that are willing to open up and talk about those kinds of things. But I think even within the workplace, it feels a little weird. Like, oh, if I start talking about this, are people gonna treat me differently? But I find the more you talk about that, more people are like, "Oh, you're going through that too? Like, I'm not alone in that." Like,
Mhm.
you end up like having a bit of community sort of form around just normalizing talking about it. It's okay to talk about. We're all gonna go
Yes.
through it at some point, whether it's like the seasonal stress of like an uptick in work, for a time of year or something like that, or whether it's like like you were talking about the microaggressions that you face at work. Like I face microaggressions to a much much lesser degree, but I used to be a really heavy guy. I used to weigh way over 300 pounds, and I would deal with like the weight jokes and the weight comments. And it's like
Mhm.
I worked at one company where they're like, hey, we're gonna go skydiving if we hit this goal. I'm like, I can't go. It's like, oh, okay, well then we'll go scuba
Mhm.
diving. I'm like, still can't go. Like,
Mhm.
can we do something that doesn't involve like super rigorous activity? And they're like, I guess we'll go out for dinner. I'm like, great. you know and now everybody's looking at the heavy guy at the table going, how much are you going to eat
Yeah.
today? It's like,
Exactly.
it sucks. And I'm not nearly trying to equate like what people of color go through.
Yeah.
uh
No.
but
Absolutely.
but I'm there with you as far as like having to deal with that and just not have people to talk about it. It makes you feel lonely, and I think tech can already be a pretty isolating place to be. That having some kind of community that you can just have a chat with makes such a big difference.
No
And so
question.
I think
That's
it's
so
it's
funny.
important. You gotta find people that you're comfortable to be around and stuff. So
No, that's huge. I think that that's really important. We don't talk enough about body shaming,
yeah.
body images in our culture. And that's actually because I actually have a therapist that I go to, and that's
Okay.
actually come up recently in our sessions is talking about like body image stuff, body shaming,
Hmm.
just accepting your body for what it is,
Yeah,
even if other people don't, I think we need to normalize that, accepting other bodies and other body types,
for
other
sure.
shapes. We just need to accept differences in people,
Yeah,
regardless of what it is. And it is something that we don't talk about enough. It isn't something that we naturally go into conversation with, and I think that's why I'm so proud of my podcast, is because it's normalizing having these conversations where people feel isolated when they
mhm,
have these specific um, pockets that they're in the world. And it's sad that we kind of just don't embrace everything about everyone.
yeah. I'm definitely gonna check that out. I followed it on Spotify, and encourage everybody else like go check that out too. It's gonna be fun to kind of listen in and see what you got on there. Um,
Absolutely.
cool. What else can we chat about? We've been going for almost an hour now. Any side projects? Anything sort of like on the side that you're kind of tinkering with that you want to chat about, or what else is going on?
Yeah, so I'm actually trying to get into the educational space
Mm,
right now. So, aside from my podcast, I want to get into the space of courses and educating people. So, one of my
cool.
number one goals is to actually start blogging more
Mhm.
about my journey in tech, and also about educating people on career advice, career coaching, and also the technologies of JavaScript and Rails, so I can build up my skills and also educate other people.
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to do is just get into the educational space. I plans in the future of building an application with a friend to actually have our own courses online so that we can educate
Nice.
people from our
Yeah.
perspective. So
Cool.
that's what's on the horizon for me. So definitely be on the lookout for that, guys. Um, and that's the biggest thing, is just getting more people into the field, lowering the barrier, but also making sure that we're producing quality
Mhm.
engineers at the same time,
Right.
keeping the balance, because education is what is really going to help with that. Just making
For
sure we're
sure.
educating people. So yeah, that's what's it for me on the
That's cool.
horizon. So yeah, I'm excited about that. What about you? Any side projects for you,
Ooh,
Ian?
I've always got something on the go, whether it's the 3D printers or like making my lights blink behind me. Um, I think one thing that and this will kind of touch on what you just talked about from an education point of view. One thing that I've been bringing up a lot in discussions around developer relations and coming up with curriculum and teaching other people, especially teaching developers, is something that I kind of picked up while teaching at Turing. Is the idea of make sure that you're accounting for different learning styles. Not everybody learns well by reading like huge long blog posts. Like you got to keep them relatively short or make them multi-page or make a multi-series kind of thing. But some people learn better by video. Some people learn better with audio, which is why, as part of this stream, I like to sort of like take little chunks of this and like put it out as podcast audio. Or, we do the live video stream, obviously, but then I've got like the daily email series that you can subscribe to and all the written content on the website because everybody learns different ways. And so I would say, like, whatever you and your friend are aiming towards, like, try your best to accommodate different learning styles, for sure. And then thinking about things like when you're presenting and like doing like a webinar or a video, even just down to accessibility things like avoiding contractions, because native
Mm,
speakers don't always get the context of, contractions like can't or
mm,
won't and things like that. But also, closed
wow.
captioning systems will have a much easier time picking up when you say, I cannot do something versus I can't do
Mm,
something, because sometimes the syllables kind of blend together and the captioning systems have a hard time figuring out what it was you just said. But
wow.
the easier the captioning system can pick that up, the easier translation systems can translate that into other languages too. And so
Wow.
just trying to pay attention to that. So I've actually been going back through techinterview.guide, the website, and all the email series that I'm going through and rewriting all of. Just
Wow.
let's get rid of contractions. Let's make it as easy as possible. And
Yes.
I'm using a site called Hemingway, or
Mm,
it's modeled around like Emmett or Ernest Hemingway,
yeah.
and they've got a whole
Yeah.
thing on like what sort of education level does the reader need to have to understand what you're saying. And so I'm kind of
Mm,
targeting like fifth grade through eighth grade, sort of reading level, because the average
mm,
American is only has an eighth grade reading level,
yes.
as far as vocabulary. So I want to make sure that my content is as accessible to all of those people as possible. And so I'm, as I write stuff, I paste it into there, and it gives me recommendations on what to change and how to simplify grammar and statements. I'm like, this is brilliant. The people have gone through the process of like evaluating natural language processing to do that kind of stuff. I'm like, that's great. So it's time consuming, but at the end of it, I feel like really, really happy about that. So yeah, I'm actually going through and like rewriting a lot of content right now, just because that's such, a big thing on my heart right now of like, I want to reach as many people as possible, but I need to meet them where they're at. I can't expect them to come to where I am. I need to go to where they are. And just kind of generally in tech, I think it's something that I've had like a really passionate sort of shift in my perspective on. Especially over the last 4 or 5 years of just be more inclusive and everybody's welcome. But there's a difference between saying you're welcome and I made this with you in mind. And that's the biggest thing that I've really kind of been talking about to some people, and like, whoa, like you're right. There is a big difference, between those two things of like, yeah, you can come read my stuff versus like, no, I wrote this specifically for you. It makes a big difference. So.
That's amazing. That's really, really awesome. I'm so happy that you're thinking in that way. And I think that's the beauty of tech and why I'm so intrigued about being in this industry and why I feel like I'll be here forever.
Yeah.
I'll really stay in this industry because people actually really do want to learn. I think people build technologies to help people integrate more, to help people learn more, to bring people together, to make it easier for people who don't have access to certain things. I think that's the heart of what tech is. Obviously, there's the money part and, people wanting to, start startups to get a lot of wealth. But I think innovation in technology has at the heart of it, to me, it really does have thinking of other people in mind and how to make other people's lives easier, inclusivity. And I think that's really, really great. I think that's awesome. That's more of what we need, especially in America. So I think that's great. Thank you for that, Ian.
Yeah, for sure. And happy to chat anytime if you got other questions about those kinds of topics. Considering that you want to get into the realm of like interview preparation and help people go get those jobs, I think I just found a regular guest on the live stream. Love to have you back and kind of hear your perspectives and stuff kind of as you learn and grow. And, as you sort of gain ranks, you're going to become an interviewer yourself. And like, what are you going to bring to that interview process? Are you going to sort of carry on the legacy of the interview process that you were brought in on? Are you going to introduce different things that may cater to other folks? It's going to be interesting to kind of see how that evolves and shifts over time. Especially, everybody wants to be like the big FANG companies, and so they're all following that same interview process of like leak code challenge and take home challenge, and hours and hours of prep and hours of like actually sitting through interviews and slogging through all this stuff. It's like, does it really need to be this hard? Like, and I get it. They want the best of the best of the best. And so I get it. They have a process to follow. And when I walked away from this one FANG company today, I wrote them and I'm like, I understand you have a process and that's fine. But given that I've got these offers, like, I'm not gonna spend my time jumping through that many hoops. It's not worth it for me. I doubt I'll ever hear back from them, and that's fine too. Like,
that's great. I think there's room for all of it. I think there's room for the exceptionally great, where you just want like top secret scientist level, rocket scientist level engineers, and I think that there's enough space for just average people.
Absolutely.
Who just really need well-paying jobs.
Absolutely.
I think there's space for it all, and I understand like wanting the top notch. I think that there's levels to everything, but I think that some people just need to just really realize what you are kind of putting out there when you're putting these tech interviews
for sure
based in algorithms out there. Like, what is it that you're telling people who are actually coming to interview and want to work for you? You're telling them, wow, I need to know this high level thinking. Maybe this isn't for me. So it's all about balance.
Yep, for sure. And looking at chat, RC Maniac says accessibility is an area that's very under focused. Zooey says, it's great you brought that up. Accessibility is what got me interested in doing front end dev. I think there are a lot of aspects to accessibility, whether it's like color blindness or alt tags on images so that screen readers can pick that kind of stuff up for people that are visually impaired, or you have total visual impairment and blindness, that it has to go through and actually process that in audio format for them to even consume that content in the first place. It makes a big difference, and it's a huge overarching sort of thing to plan towards and work towards. It's a lot of work, and some companies have entire teams that are just focusing on that kind of thing, and I applaud their efforts. I think it's fantastic that they're doing that.
It is a lot of work. It is
Yeah.
a lot of work, but it's a good fight. It is. It really
Yeah.
is. You'll feel a lot better about what you're doing, knowing that it's helping people. You
For
really
sure.
will feel better.
Sure.
For sure.
And RC Maniac says, "Oh, you got job offers? Congrats!" Yeah, I've got one written offer and I've got one verbal offer that I'm hoping to commit next week as another written offer. So, yeah, we'll see where that goes.
So
But
good to hear.
But until that second offer comes in, I'm still interviewing with some other places. I do want to kind of wrap up those interviews, but I don't want to leave this other place like hanging too long. So I told them, I was going to take a few days and I'd get back to them. When I get back to them, it's basically going to kick off the negotiation process. So that'll drag that out for maybe a day or two. So we'll see how that plays out.
We'll see.
So yeah,
Fingers crossed. You got
Mike,
this.
Yeah. Mike Chen hanging out in chat. Good to see you in chat, Mike. Mike's going to be on the stream in 2 weeks, and super excited to have Mike share his perspectives as well. He says it's interesting. I think those FANG interviews often don't get even the best of the best. It's kind of a random way of narrowing down the pipeline because they have too many applicants, and that's true. A lot of people will self-select out, going, "Oh, I applied for this job," and then you find out what the process is, and they're like, never mind. So yeah, I agree, Mike, with that. Like, a lot of people are going to self-select out just because of the duration of the process and what they know they're going to have to go through. Some people, though, they're like, hey, it's going to be worth it to make that 400K, a year comp. Like, some people are like, I'm all about the dollars, and I will jump through any hoops you want me to jump through. And I get that. I think that there are people out there that do want to chase that. I'm not one of them. I used to want to work for Google and like all the big companies, and now I'm like, nah,
I'm okay. I'm fine.
Yeah. Zooey says, I hope they move away from leak code stuff. I received my fastest rejection letter the morning after bombing my coding assessment yesterday. I knew I did bad, but I'm glad I didn't get to the next interview. It would have been embarrassed to have to explain that. Yeah, I mean, that's hard too. I mean, getting rejections in general is not a great feeling, but understanding that, it's a learning process. And I've said, I think I posted on LinkedIn, like, a rejection can make you bitter or it can make you better. And I think that there's a difference in your mindset of how you look at that. And I think I actually heard someone from, I think it was on a Twitter space recently. They were saying, like, think of a rejection as a redirection of, okay, I wasn't right for that job, and so I'm going to redirect my efforts over on this job instead, and maybe that's going to be a better job, a better workplace, a better outcome. And so it's hard not to take it personally. It's really hard not to take it, like, oh, they don't want me. It's like, no, they don't want your skills. They wanted something else, and that's okay. That's them, and you've got your skills and your experience and your background. You're going to find the perfect job for you.
Exactly. And that's what goes back to what we talked about earlier, selling the promise. You're selling the promise, especially coming out of boot camp or coming out of university or being self-taught. You're selling the promise that you can learn. You have the ability to learn, pick this up. And some companies are like, wow, like, I'm willing to invest in your progress. I'm willing to invest in the promise. Some companies are like, no, I want greatness now. And so you're able to get, when you get that rejection, you're able to really find out who really wants to invest in you and who really isn't willing to do that.
Right. So when you were interviewing with this company, Ghameerah, did you know that you were going to be getting into like TypeScript and some other stuff that you were going to have to like dive in and learn?
I did. They did tell me that TypeScript was going to be a part of it. They did tell me that GraphQL was going to be a part of it. They actually sent me some resources to like help out with the learning, because they also knew that I had the internship that I was in while I was still interviewing. They were like, we know that you're doing this internship and it ends soon, but in the meantime, while you're waiting for your start date, here's some resources to get you kind of caught up to speed on the domain, on the technology of the code base, of the product as well. They gave me some product training, and they gave me some resources to kind of get familiar with TypeScript and GraphQL.
That's cool.
And it didn't really hit until I really got into the code base and was given actual assignments to work on it. And that's when, you always learn better by doing. You
Mm,
you always do. Just getting familiar with the concepts
right.
and kind of the fundamentals of the technologies is helpful, just knowing the terminology. But you never really know what you're getting into until you're actually building something or having to solve a bug. So those are like, it's helpful to kind of get familiar with it, but you never really know what you're really getting into until you actually start it. And so I was grateful that they even, helped me out and learn about stuff before I actually started the job, which is like, I don't really know how many companies really do that. So I was really grateful for that,
Yeah.
honestly.
That's cool. It's nice that they were
Yeah,
able to kind of like give you that content, so you hit the ground running a little bit, when you get
exactly.
started. But you're right. I mean,
Yes.
seeing that code base for the first time, it's really overwhelming. Of like, oh, what did I just get
Yes.
into? Right. That's usually where my
Oh,
imposter syndrome kicks in. Of like, oh shoot, like, am I really ready for this?
yeah.
So,
No question. I'm like,
yeah.
oh, I really have to add to this code base. Like, I really have to change this. Oh, okay, got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no question.
Camillo asked a good question in chat. I've seen offers come in with 5-day turnaround time, which isn't enough time. How do you politely ask for more time without feeling like you owe them something for the time extension? So, if I understand the question right, you got a job offer and they want you to respond within 5 days. And how do you ask for an extension beyond that? There is something to be careful of there, that when they've extended that offer to you, keep in mind they've interviewed probably several people and they're waiting to hear back from you so that they can let the next person in line know that they got the job if you don't take it. And so there is a danger that if you wait too long, that they could rescind it because they want to move on to the next person. Like if they think that you're not going to take it, they may just move on to the next person. And
Interesting.
so you can very gently ask for an extension. Just say, hey, I appreciate that. I do want to finish up and be respectful of the time spent with some other companies. Could I have like an extra couple of days? But then you need to reach out to those other companies and say, hey, I have an offer in hand. I've asked them for an extension because I'd really rather work for you. You need to make it sound like I really want to finish the process with you and get an offer from you instead of these other people. And so you need to sell that other company on like, hey, could we hurry this up because this other offer is what we call exploding. And I've got a deadline. I'm going to ask them for an extension because I'd really rather finish the process with you and work with you. Sometimes that alone of like, oh, you're being considerate of us. Okay, let's see if we can speed that up. And it's amazing how quickly recruiters can speed things up once you utter those words, offer in hand. It,
Mm.
those 3 words will move mountains in the recruiting realm for
I'm
sure.
sure it will.
Yeah. And so telling a like another recruiter or another hiring manager like, hey, I have an offer, and you don't have to disclose information about it, because
Yeah,
again, you don't want them to go, oh, we can't even match that, so we'll just stop, because if you're
yeah.
bluffing, it's going to backfire on you, and so
Hmm.
you never want to bluff with that. But going to them and say like, hey, I'd really rather work for you. I appreciate the team and I appreciate the time spent, and I'd really rather finish this out. And so I've asked them for an extension so I can come work with you. Is there anything we can do to speed
Hmm.
this up? And you'll find just being super respectful about that is going to make a big difference for them and kind of their attitude towards like continuing to move through the process with you. So that's how I would approach that. And part of me telling this company today is like, hey, I got to take some time. I got to look through all the material. I got to call like doctors and dentists and find out if they're even going to take this insurance and all this stuff. So that's going to take a couple of days, and but tomorrow's Friday and then it's the weekend, and then I got to wait till Monday to finish some of that up, and it's going to take some time.
Hmm.
And then I've got to negotiate. It's like, okay, is this base salary really what I wanted? Because I was targeting more, and because they didn't really share the salary band up front. I think maybe they didn't want to scare me away, or have me say like, I had the background they wanted, but if they weren't going to offer very much, I would have said no. There is that risk, right? Is sharing that salary early, is that you're going to lose out on a candidate that you really want. And in the process, like they're all quality people, and I'm really excited to, I would be excited to take that job if I had no other offers. I would absolutely take this job just for the quality of the people and the kind of product that they're doing. It would be IoT, basically Internet of Things, where I would get to tinker with like Raspberry Pis and like little circuits and actually do live streaming about putting circuits together and using their product and talk about the code and pushing data up to the cloud and stuff like that. Like it's gonna be really cool. Um, and so that's basically going to start the negotiation phase of like, okay, well, this is what I want. This is what I know I'm worth. Like the amount that they've offered is like my salary from 5 years ago. And it's like, okay, I could work for that. Like I know that I can afford to live on that amount of money. That's not the issue. It's just what's my value? Like what's my time and my effort and my experience actually worth? It's worth this range instead. And so if there's something we can do to move closer to that, and so that'll probably have a couple of back and forth rounds, and if other offers come in the meantime, okay. Meanwhile, I'm contacting everybody else, going, hey, I've got an official written offer, I've got a verbal offer. Can we speed this up? And just see what transpires with all that. So. Yeah.
That's great advice.
And no, it's not the one with Peloton. Peloton, I'm still waiting to hear whether they've even looked at my application. So I applied for like a director of engineering role at Peloton, which would also be really cool. Like every job I've applied for since getting turned down by Amazon, I've had all of these like incredible opportunities go, I would work there, I would work there, I would work there. Like absolutely, I would love to take all these jobs. So I'm actually happy that I got rejected by Amazon because I've got way cooler prospects now. That if they were all to turn around and give me an offer, I'd be like, I would be completely paralyzed going, I want to work on all of them, but can't do that. So
I love Peloton. Their workouts are so good.
Yeah. I haven't used any of their products, but apparently you get a hefty discount on one of their bikes if you get a job. So
hey, that would be cool.
Yeah, but the cool thing about Peloton is a bunch of my teacher co-workers from Turing work there, and a whole bunch of our students work there, and I would be like their boss's boss, which feels a little awkward going from like being peer instructors to now I'm like their boss's boss, but it would be a fantastic opportunity. It would grow me in a lot of ways too, and so I always look for a role where I can do like 75% of the job, and 25% of the job I'm like pooping my pants because I'm scared that I'm not going to be able to do it. Like there's a growth opportunity for me. I'm a firm believer if the job doesn't scare you a little bit, you're taking the wrong job.
No question.
So yeah, I think, and kind of going back to the question I was asking you, like, did you know you were going to get into TypeScript and GraphQL before, like, as part of the interview process? And I think it's good that they were upfront about that, and you knew going in you're going to be learning and applying the skills that you've already got, but you're also going to continue to learn new technologies. How did you sort of sell them on the idea of like, oh yeah, I can totally pick up TypeScript and I can pick up GraphQL? Like, how did you kind of sell them on your ability to learn? What did that look like for you?
I really just talked about transferable skills because I didn't really have technology skills or experience to really sell and to say, hey, I kind of know this, so this is similar. Like there's nothing really comparable to TypeScript. It's a very statically typed language. There's arguments about that, but it's something that I never really encountered. Especially something with like a language like Java, where everything is very strict, and JavaScript is very loose and very there's no real rules to it. So learning TypeScript is something that is still kind of learning curve for me. Defining types. So I really had to sell the fact that I was an athlete. I was able to kind of on the fly, just like figure it out. That's really kind of what I had to sell. My experience as an athlete, things that really didn't have anything to do with technical skills, just my character and who I am as a person. Being able to pick up on things fast, and also selling the fact that I did graduate the Flatiron program, and the fact that I was able to get an internship right out of that. I was able to just sell the fact that I am someone that is going to ask questions. I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to go out and ask, hey, what is this? I'm going to ask questions. That's something that I'm really built on. I'm very curious. I'm always going to ask like a million questions on something. So that's something that I really sold to them was I am going to figure it out. I'm going to ask a million questions. I'm going to bug you until I figure it out, until I know. And I'm also a learner at heart. That was one
Hmm.
of the biggest things of why
That's
I
good.
wanted to join Flatiron, was I really just enjoy the process of learning. I love the process of going to university, of getting my degree. I actually want to go get more degrees just because I love the process of learning. And that's
Cool.
the biggest thing about being in tech and being a software engineer, is that you're constantly having to learn new
For sure.
technologies. And
For
that's
sure.
something that's really thrilling to me. I love the fact that I can really, really learn something new almost every single day. And there's so much to learn in technology that it's almost endless. So I love
Yeah.
the fact that I'm always going to be growing. I'm always going to be learning, and I'm just a resilient person. I mean, I was able to work a full-time job and also graduate a boot camp. So my resiliency, my character, my ability to be disciplined as well. Time management is
That's
something I'm
huge.
trying to
Yeah.
get better at. But just selling my character and things that are transferable as far as just my experiences in life, was how I was able to sell myself truly.
Yeah. That's great. And Zooey mentioned in
Sure.
chat, he's been trying to transfer skills in working in kitchens as well to kind of relay that. And I've spoken like at Turing, we would do like employer roundtables where we'd say like, what kinds of students make the best employees? And they're like, we love people to come from food industry because it's high pace, it's a lot of teamwork, you're juggling a lot of things and trying to keep track of like which customer needs which things, but it's also very customer centric, and so it's all about keeping the customer happy and understanding their needs. And there's a lot of ways that you can sort of tie that in as well, and,
Oh,
and,
no
and sort of
question.
find those parallels.
No question. I think my career coach, Insa, at Flatiron, she's amazing. Um, she was one of the people that kind of helped me to tailor my storytelling, to kind of really be like, hey, you can really sell the fact that you worked in the kitchen as something that's transferable to tech, and also your experience as an athlete, and also being in finance as well, because I did study finance. These
Mhm.
are things that you don't even think about when it comes to technology. You're like, I don't know how this relates to technology at all. But she was really helpful in helping me figure out, how do I blend these stories together to make it seem like I could actually learn. And it is really enlightening when you're like, wow, like I didn't even think that that was something that made sense, but it really does. Being in a kitchen, I worked at Waffle House. That was where I was working before I even stepped in to this world of tech. And yeah, being in a kitchen is very, very difficult. It is not easy to work in a kitchen, and you have to work with so many demands at once. You have to think on the fly. You have to problem solve on the fly, and that is very transferable in tech. It's almost like not the same, but it's very, very like very, very mirroring, where it's like
Yeah, for
you
sure.
have to really think of solutions quickly, and you have to be able to adjust to conflict, and you have to think of problems and solutions. So yes, working in
Awesome.
a kitchen is a great, great way to transfer your skills into tech for sure.
Awesome. That's great. And big shout out to Jen Develops for rating with a party of 7. Appreciate that. Get the lights blinking in the background just for Jen. Welcome
Hey.
to everybody on their stream. Jen and Carmen are working on some open source software, if I remember right. How was your stream? How did it go? What you building? How far have you getting with that so far? Yeah, I found a little Python library to make these nano leaf things, interact a little bit. So now I can hit a button on my stream deck and they like blink for me in the background. So yeah, and
Awesomeness.
and Zooey says that they're taking a lot of the things that we've talked about and they're actually using that in interviews. So it's a great way to sell those skills for sure. Like how do you see those parallels and how do you see that experience kind of playing out in tech? Because it's a big thing there for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a journey of self-discovery too. That's one thing I'm learning about the interview process, is that you're constantly having to talk about yourself, your experience, and you're actually learning and uncovering things in that process too. Like, whoa, like I
Yeah.
didn't think that I would be good at that. Wow, okay. So yeah, just take it all in stride. It's all part
Yeah,
of the
that's great.
journey.
That's awesome. So Jen says in chat, their stream was a lot of fun. We hadn't touched our stuff in 3 months, which feels like forever in tech. So it was a lot of dusting off cobwebs, relearning what you wrote 3 months ago. Yeah, I do that too. I look at code going, what was I thinking? Um, and sometimes it's like, what was I thinking? But sometimes it's like, no, what was my train of thought there? The discipline that I actually got into when dealing with code that I knew I was going to put away was always leave yourself a broken test, so that when you come back later and run your tests, you know where you left off, because that failing test is where you're going to kind of resume your work. Which is also why I'm a big fan of TDD. So like end your day with a broken test, so when you get in the next morning, that's the first thing on your to-do list, is you make that test pass and then figure out, okay, now that you're back in the realm of things, what do we do from there? So, but yeah, appreciate the raid. Welcome for dropping by for sure.
Oh yeah.
Mike says, I usually can't remember what I was doing with code 3 days ago. Yeah, I'm there with you too.
Same.
3 months ago,
Same.
something. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't remember what I was doing all today. To be honest.
Yeah. And Carmen says, yeah, they last wrapped up with Hacktoberfest. So yeah, that is a minute ago for sure. Yeah, good times,
Yes.
good times.
I should go back to my projects from Flatiron, because it's been a while since I even touched that.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
One thing that I often mention is, if you ever want to go learn another language or another framework, take an old project and rewrite it in that other language or framework, because you already know the problem, you've already solved it. You don't have to go figure out a solution and learn the new technology. Just reapply what you did in the new tech stack. So, you've worked in Rails, go do it in Sinatra. Or you've done it in, vanilla JavaScript, go rewrite that thing in TypeScript and like see what would be involved there. Or if you did some React, go see what you can apply from that in Angular or some other kind of thing. There are ways of kind of tying that stuff in. Cool, Ghameerah, I want to be respectful of your time. I know you're out on East Coast and it's getting late over there. I do like to end my guests on my stream by asking rapid fire ridiculous questions. And so these are not meant to be like long thought, thoughtful answers or anything. It's just rapid fire. Like, is cereal soup?
Yes.
All right. Is a hot dog a sandwich?
No.
No. Is there any kind of kids movie that scarred you for life?
Smart House.
Okay. What mythical creature would improve the world most if it actually existed?
Bigfoot.
Bigfoot? Okay. All right. How many chickens would it take to take down an elephant?
One super strong one.
Yeah. All right. What would the worst buy one get one free sale of all time be?
Oh my god. Buy one get one free. Buy a box and get another box free. Like if you're moving, that's terrible. It's awful.
All right. If your 5-year-old self suddenly found themselves inhabiting your current body, what would your 5-year-old self do first?
A flip. I would flip.
Yeah.
I would do a back stand or something.
All right. Last one. You're a mad scientist. What scientific experiment would you run if money and ethics were not an issue?
How to fly? How would I fly?
Yeah.
That's what I would figure out. How to get humans to fly.
Cool. Someone redeemed some channel points for a dad joke. Let's see. Hey, Ghameerah, have you heard about those new corduroy pillows?
No, I haven't. Tell me about it.
They're really making headlines.
This is good.
Awesome. Really appreciate your time. Ghameerah, thank you for sharing your perspectives on your journey into tech and kind of the process that you had to go through. Loved hearing about, DevColor and kind of that support team that you've got. I think that was really inspiring to get other people to talk about it. Actually, Zooey, talk to Mike Chen if you're still in chat. Talk to Mike Chen. Mike, if you're still in chat. Zooey in chat is curious whether there's an Asian community of chatting with each other and sort of supporting each other and setting goals and so on. That might be a good one. And then we had
middle school teacher.
What? Your middle school social studies teacher? That's amazing.
That's insane. I think I know who
that is so cool.
His name is Martin.
That's awesome.
He is a really cool guy. He's great.
That's cool.
Thank you for joining.
I'm curious how Martin happened to find the stream. Did they follow you on Twitter or something and happened to stumble by the stream? But
I'm
Um,
curious too.
yeah, but really, and also appreciate the follow. So appreciate that. And thank you so much for your time. Definitely follow Ghameerah's podcast. We shared that link, and I'll get all these links up on YouTube later as well. I'm going to kind of go back through the chat and grab all those links. But follow Ghameerah on LinkedIn. They also drop their Instagram and their Twitter handles as well. So follow Ghameerah in all the places. Again, thank you so much for your time. I'd love to have you back on the stream. I think as you continue to learn and grow in tech, you're going to bring a lot of really cool perspectives on kind of what you're learning and how you continue to kind of learn and grow. We'll definitely be hanging out in virtual coffee on a more regular basis. Virtualcoffee.io. Everybody can join that. It's a great Slack community. We have regular Zoom calls where we just kind of hang out and chat about interview prep and tech prep and just everyday kind of tech sort of hurdles and stuff that we're trying to get through just to support one another. Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it. Everyone, we're going to wrap up there. I know a bunch of you just dropped in, but we're going to wrap up for the night just for the sake of that timing. Let me go find someone that we can go raid. Or if you have suggestions for who to go raid, feel free to drop that in chat. Finance Singularity's online, so we might go raid them. But if you've got other suggestions, if anybody in chat's got suggestions on a raid, otherwise I'll probably just target Finance Singularity. They're always fun. They're building a skiing telemetry app using Ionic and Angular. Sounds extra nerdy. Let's go check that out, I think. So yeah, again, Ghameerah, thank you for your time and for sharing your perspectives with us. We'll definitely have you back on the stream for sure, and we'll see you in virtual coffee soon. Let's get this raid.
I'll see you around for sure.
Yeah. All right. We'll get this raid set up, and we're gonna go raid Finance Singularity. Everyone, thanks for hanging out. I'll get this video up on YouTube soon with all the links that we've seen in chat, and we'll catch you next time. Have a good night, everyone.
See ya.